man comes into this world naked. But this nakedness isn't just physical. It means he hasn't been clothed yet in his conditioning. He's yet to pick that up. But literally, as he's born, the conditioning begins. In truth, the conditioning even begins before that, as he's held in utero. He picks up the feelings, you could call it the vibration, a familiarity of the body that he finds himself in. And so already he becomes clothed. But these clothes are invisible, like an energetic cloak of feelings and thoughts and a sense of self-worth, as his God isn't the God of pure love, but the God of conditionality. This is pointed to as what is born of the flesh is flesh, and what is born of the soul is the soul, or the light. So, from the moment we're born, we put on clothes. Now, the strange thing is that if we put on physical clothes, we recognize that we're not those clothes. We can change those clothes every day, or even during the day. Of course, to some degree, people become defined by their outer clothes. Everyone has clothes that they prefer to wear, their own style, their own signature, as the fashionable people say, their own expression. But the clothes we put on the soul or around the soul are invisible. And so we presume that we are those clothes, that we are our nationality. We are perhaps a football team that we were programmed to like, or that we are our job. We are what other people think of us, and we are what our parents told us that we were, as they metaphorically clothe us in the unseen clothes that they were clothed by or put into by their own parents. And so this is an ongoing experience from generation to generation. So when we speak about going back to our unseen nature, our primordial self, our Buddha nature, it's no surprising that nature is sometimes exhibited by enlightened masters as a childlike state. In other words, a kind of light-heartedness, a sense of lightness, a freedom from the heaviness of the fear-based conditioning system of this physical reality. There is a literal expression in the words. You have to be become like a child again, to understand the nature of heaven. So we could say that the spiritual journey, the journey of healing, is to spend a little time considering, who is it that's wearing the clothes of this personality? So for that, we need to pause for a while, and we need to notice the clothes that we're wearing. And so noticing the clothes that we're wearing, it requires us to pay attention to that personality that was installed into us over a period of time. You know, some people say that the first 2 years of our life is the whole foundation of our being. How we were loved, were we seen, were we held, were we accepted. And then of course, some people say up to the age of 7, that's us. That's the personality that now, if you like, the roots of the tree that grows the rest of the tree through our whole life. But the original nature, we could call it the essence of the essence, the original soul, that light. This is the journey of mysticism. To first examine the clothing of the personality, which sometimes that's called the subtle body, a sense of self like a mesh that surrounds us and fills us with emotional reactivity, belief systems. And then most people think that self-development is simply getting to maybe buy some more clothes or change the top but keep the t-shirt. But for the path of mysticism, we're noticing, who is it that is wearing these thoughts? Who is it that is wearing these emotions? In other words, what precedes them? What is this I that is wearing the personality? We already subconsciously in our language patterns recognize this, because we say, I believe, I feel, I think. And so, of course, Eastern Path said, have you ever stopped to consider what is the I that is thinking? What is the I that is feeling? Now, we don't necessarily get rid of the clothes, the personality, the unique molding of the clay of our being by realizing this sense of I at the heart of it. But weirdly, when we're not so obsessed with becoming the clothing of the personality, when we realize we're something else, even though we still have a personality, we're not as defined by it. If we have negative thoughts, we don't get lost in neurosis and start thinking, oh, I am bad, I'm these bad thoughts, or I'm these problematic emotions. We notice that these are just clothes we're wearing. Interesting, a negative or vicious thought has just passed through my mind, but I'm not so defined by that. It comes, it goes. Or I have an aggressive emotion, an emotion of hatred, we think, I'm not this emotion though. I'm experiencing this emotion, so it arises, and sometimes it stays around for a while, and then it goes again. And then, interestingly, because we're not so reactive, in other words, as Jung said, we're not resisting these emotions which cause them to persist. Instead, we're allowing them to simply pass through us. We become less and less defined by these beliefs and these feelings. And so, even though we have the clothing of the personality, it's just how we navigate this world. It becomes less important. We become less defined by our programming. So, because we're not so defined by this programming of what political party I've been conditioned to believe in, which religion I've been conditioned to attach to, because we're not defined by those things. We can exist within them, but there's not so much fear of definition, the type of fear that causes me to hate or to be against or feel superior or inferior to people who wear different clothing, different programs. And so the way out of this situation, the human condition, is to realize that we're so much more than the program, than the clothing of the personality that we're wearing.